It's Saturday in Buffalo, New York, my hometown.
Hi, how are you? What's your name? The Blitzers.
And these guys, well, they're fans of FC Buffalo Blitzers.
I watch all the time. You're the only one.
That's a soccer team that somehow was named after me.
Cool as that. Hey, thanks.
Something I find both flattering and a little embarrassing.
The situation.
CNN has asked me to come here to trace my roots,
This is downtown Buffalo.
a task I find daunting. I grew up here in the 1950s and 60s with my sister and parents. A lot has changed since then. My dad passed away in 2002, and my mom, she's 92 years old, and she now lives in Florida. But some things here never change, like the Anchor Bar, the birthplace of the Buffalo chicken wing.
It brings back my memories from my youth. 2 weeks ago, I was on the Israel-Gaza border.
Now you're in Buffalo eating
Now I'm in Buffalo eating chicken wings. All right, so we're in Jerusalem.
My journey to learn about my family's history has been months in the making, delayed in part because of this, the war between Israel and Hamas. I'm in Jerusalem reporting for nearly a month,
Got another siren.
but a friend suggests I take some time to visit Israel's National Holocaust Museum, Yad Vashem.
Let's go to my father's side first. Last name is Blitzer.
I, of course, knew my grandparents died during the Holocaust, but I wanted to learn more.
Circumstances of death, it says that KZ is concentration camp, is what it says. A lager, which means camp, Auschwitz.
My dad, David Blitzer, wrote a testimony for the museum detailing what he knew about the fate of his family in Poland during World War II.
You know, I didn't know till I came here to Israel this week that on my father's side, my grandparents were killed at Auschwitz. I just see it now. I feel like I've been robbed of an experience of having grandparents. 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust, and I saw the documentation there, place of extermination, if you will, whatever it was called, Auschwitz, that it really hit me, and I knew that's where I wanted to go. Said Arbeit macht frei.
Work will set you free. The meaning was that that was a place for working, which was not.
It was for slave laborers.
Yes, that it was this kind of camp, but work was an instrument of extermination prisoners here.
It's one thing to learn about the Holocaust in school or from books, but to see these places firsthand, some untouched since the war, can be overwhelming.
Most of the Jews who were brought here came by cattle car.
And then began selection.
Who lives and who dies.
Exactly.
In my particular case, my grandparents died here.
Probably they were driven right away to gas chamber. People who walked in, they really believed they were in shower room.
So they thought maybe they were going to get a shower, but instead,
that was the gas chamber.
While many Jews were brought to Auschwitz from far away, my dad's family was unique. He grew up in a neighborhood in the town of Auschwitz, which is also called Hashvenchim in Polish and Oshpitzim in Yiddish.
The Great Synagogue and all Jewish...
Arthur Schindler, a local historian, agreed to help me find my dad's childhood home.
We have some school records. You see, this is the information about the Rachel Blitzer, born...
Rachel, yeah, that's my aunt.
And this is an address, Legionów 26.
Now, we've looked over here. There's no Legionów 26 anymore.
No. Many houses in this Zasole area were taken down by the Nazis.
They were destroyed.
Like much of my journey so far, I'm struggling to find remnants of my father's life.
did this house exist before World War II?
Do you remember, by any chance, a family named Blitzer?
None of the neighbors remembered the Blitzers or the house in which they once lived. But I did find a place where my family once stood, the town square.
In the testimony that my father provided. You know, he had 3 sisters. Only one sister survived, Rachel, survived the war. But 2 of his other sisters, Freya and Hinda, when the Nazis came in, they were brought to this area. 2 sisters, they were killed. They were young girls.
It's pretty much the same story on my mother's side. She survived, but her parents died during the Holocaust.
I'm named after my grandfather, Wolf Zilberfoot. And people always ask me, it's the most frequently asked question I get, was Wolf your real name? And I say, yes, it's my real name. I was named after my maternal grandfather.
That's my cousin, Pepe Dotan. We grew up together in Buffalo. She's here to help me find my mother's roots.
Where the Zilberfoot residence was. What number was it?
Number 12.
Whatever house they had is gone.
Yeah, it's closed.
Together, we found what's left of my grandfather's old factory that produced clay pipes. Not far from that factory was the slave labor camp where my mother, her sister Paula, and 2 brothers, Mike and Yurik, worked.
But this was the land where the Skarzisko labor camp, Camp A, was.
In this camp, 24,000 Jews came in for labor. Almost 18,000 died here. There was no crematorium here, but they simply burned the bodies. And we're told that they buried the ashes here in this place. So it's conceivable that our grandparents are, their ashes
we
are
have
here.
no idea.
We have no idea,
Yeah.
no.
When you look at my mom now, she's 92 years old, you wouldn't realize how courageous she was when she was liberated in 1945 from the slave labor camp. They told all the Jewish workers, you're going to be marching on this death march. My mother knew that if they were on this forced death march, they would die.
This remarkable woman took her siblings and hid in the basement of the factory. And they stayed there for a few days until they were finally liberated by the Russians.
Yep. Pretty amazing story.
Pretty amazing, amazing woman.
To this day, I'm very aware of the really courageous moves that my mom made. She's obviously a very wonderful woman.
Before we leave Poland, we visit the only Jewish cemetery still left in the town of Auschwitz, and I see a tombstone that says Blitzer. I don't know if this woman was related to me, but I do what my father would have wanted. I say the special prayer for the dead, the Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgada shemei rabbah, b'yamah divrach hirutei v'yamlich b'chutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chal beit Yisrael, b'agalav izman korev yimru amen.
So after the war, after my parents were liberated, my mother by the Russians, the Russian troops, my dad by the French troops, they did what most Holocaust survivors immediately did once they were strong enough. They went and started looking for family members who may have survived. And so they were on a train, and all of a sudden they saw each other, their eyes met, they fell in love.
Within a few months, they were married by an American military chaplain, a rabbi. My dad found work in Augsburg, Germany, where my sister and I were born.
My dad always said, you know, in those days you didn't know what was going to be happening a week from now or 2 weeks. And after the years, what they went through during the war, they said, you know, you had to grab life when you could.
When my dad was visiting nearby Munich one day, he saw a long line, so he got in it. It turned out it was a line for visas to America, the result of a law signed by President Truman to bring Holocaust survivors and displaced persons to the United States. A few months later, we were moving to upstate New York.
When he came to Buffalo, people helped him get that job. They said, oh, you can have a job at Bethlehem Steel, you make some money. And they thought it was pretty cool, but it was awful.
It's ungodly hot, it's going constantly, and it will not stop if you're injured.
My dad hated the steel mill and left after a year or so. He and my Uncle Sam Friedman decided to open a small deli.
1434 Hurdle Avenue. It used to be Blitzer's Delicatessen. And now it's Buffalo Airbrush 10. And Wolf. Jessica, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. This was the deli. This was, I used to pack eggs here.
Okay.
And I would come in on Sunday mornings and pack eggs. So I would walk in over here. All right, guys, keep going. Work. We're working. Yeah, so this was where we used to pack the eggs. A lot of memories. Blitzer's Deli. Hard to believe.
My dad didn't like the deli business much either. Then one day, he was talking to friends he knew from the concentration camp. They were buying land
Developed all these homes.
and building homes for GIs returning from the war. My dad decided to give it a try.
My dad actually built this house. This was one of the first houses he built when he became a builder. That's my house. Somebody's living there.
It turns out my father had a knack for home building, and with a lot of hard work, became a successful developer.
I went to school here. This is where they taught me to be a journalist.
Awesome, really? Your roots.
This is my roots. That's right, exactly what it is. That's me, Wolf Blitzer, Wolf I. Blitzer. Student council, secondary representative, concert band, dance band, debate club, German club, humanities club, cantorial, advertising staff, marching band, National Honor Society, football JV. That was me.
So after months of following my family tree, I'm right back where I started, my hometown.
We want you every day.
It's a place where I grew up, where I went to college, where I met my wife Lynn, and where, well, I also learned a lot about eating good food.
How can we not have, we gotta have Anderson's custard, frozen custard. We're here, right?
Wolf, where are we going right now?
Ted's. Enough said. What do you want on it? Mustard, relish, ketchup, pickles. The cool people say everything you got.
Would you like any French fries or onion rings?
Yes, we would. We'd like all of the above.
You know, it's amazing, my parents, after all they went through and the losses that they went through, I never sensed the vindictiveness. You know, they wanted to move on. My dad, when he died in 2002, he was 82 years old. He was always upbeat. Whenever he would see me on television, and my mother would see me on television, they would always say the same thing, you know, this is the revenge. This is the revenge to Hitler and the Nazis.
I'm very proud of the new roots my parents planted here in America. Those roots have grown. And during this visit back to Buffalo, and indeed throughout my life, I realize a lesson I learned from my parents. Like them,
We got Wolf.
I try to grab life wherever I can.